Hey everybody, welcome back. It's Sunday, and that means it's time for streaming. Um, if I sound out of it, I've been up since 4 a.m., so I am kind of out of it. But I have with me Bear the Ben X,
The Bene Gesserit GM. Look, I got a shaved head. I'm the
Bear the Bene Gesserit, Bear the Gen X GM. And we're really just gonna do the normal Sunday thing of talking gaming. I do see Grumpy in the comments. Grumpy, if you want to come on, I can throw you the link. I don't have a lot of. Oh wait, why is this happening? Stuff. Oh, I didn't realize I had my YouTube window open still. All right. Anyways, yeah, Grumpy, if you want to come on, I can throw you the link. But I have one kind of gamey thing on my brain, and that's investigative paranormal gaming. I've had it on my mind for a bit, but then I actually started rewatching X-Files from the beginning, like just classic, thing of my childhood. But also my childhood was other things like Kolchak, and
the Night Stalker.
There's that, and then of course we had like even earlier and younger we had like Project Blue Book?
I found out that it wasn't called Project Blue Book.
Wasn't it?
No, because I spent all this time looking for this TV show that I used to watch as a kid called Project Blue Book, and I found out it's called something else. Hang on, I will tell you what it's called.
Now that you say that, I think I remember that, but yeah.
Yeah, there was a Project Blue Book series that came out in the...
Recently.
But this thing, the 1978-79 series, is called Project UFO.
Interesting.
Yeah,
they just must have always introduced themselves as Project Blue Book.
Well, it was narrated by Jack Webb, right, from Hawaii Five-0. And it was a series based on Project Blue Book,
Yeah.
Really
but no, so like with those things in mind, I was thinking about how like they're a really easy campaign to run. Because there's always room for individual initiative in the game for like players to show their agency in both literally and figuratively, because they can go out and do their own little unauthorized investigations like Mulder was always doing and stuff like that, or they can have encounters outside of their official job, but their official job is a really easy way to get them into adventures. It's like,
that's fair.
You've been given an assignment. Go to Seattle and look up suspicions of Bigfoot in the trees, or the tree octopus.
Yeah, that's fair.
But no, they just make it really, the wheels are suitably greased in a campaign like that, where you can play a number of different types of scenarios, because you can have people come to your characters with their problems privately. You can have characters run into them in their civilian life. You can have them follow their own little mulligan, their own MacGuffins and red herrings. But then if things are slow and nobody has a night, like Slan has. But yeah, if things are slow.
Slan, mute your YouTube.
I'm assuming he's still trying. He's trying to.
I hope so. Yeah, it looks like he got it. Okay.
No, he muted himself.
Oh, okay. Well, that's not the same.
I'm sure he's trying to figure it out. And speaking of muting, I should probably mute my phone.
It's StreamYard.
Really?
No, it's StreamYard that's always resetting my sound stuff. It always goes back to the it ignores the headphones and uses the internal microphone and the built-in speakers.
Fair enough. But it's fixed now, and that's the important thing. But yeah, so that's just
Yeah.
when your campaign gets slow or you don't have like a creative way to bring things in, you could always just have a file handed across the desk to your players and have them run with it. But so we played a pretty good Beyond the Supernatural campaign in like post high school or late high school along those lines, playing like FBI people. Of course, it was the heyday of the X-Files, so why wouldn't we?
Yeah, for
Mhm.
me, it was the Friday the 13th, the series. That was always the best RPG scenario I ever saw in my life.
Oh yeah, that's a good one too.
I should run that campaign using Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the RPG. That'd be so cool.
Or you could just put something
yeah.
like in your Buffy campaign world.
Well, my Buffy game is going to be set in the Wild Wild West, so no.
Well, time
But-
travel,
No! Ah, ew!
a curiosity shop in town. You could always have like a travel. Like,
That's more needful things at that point in time, right?
you could have your traveling gypsies with their cart full of interesting things.
I say thee nay, stranger. I
Or
say
maybe
thee
it's a
nay.
shop in Chinatown where everything is cursed.
Including the frozen yogurt. Can I
Yes,
go now?
might. No, so I mean, other than that, let's see. Didn't play. Did we play? Yes, we did play D&D last Monday. Wow, how unmemorable was that? Or last Sunday. So we did play D&D on Sunday. And kind of progressed along with our scenario adventure. That was fun. The had a bit of an unfortunate one of those kind of uncomfortable moments in a campaign where you have a player who's been gone for a while, for real life, comes back, and then literally the day that they come back, I get a message saying they're leaving the game.
Wow.
Whoa.
Yeah, so evidently they didn't like the way that we were playing, even though we're playing the same way we always have been. They took issue with us cutting to the actions of one character a lot in this particular session, which was completely warranted by what was going on, and nobody else had any issue with it. That's going to happen. Parties split, especially when one of those people is the rogue, who is going to go and do roguey things, right?
And even if the party doesn't split, sometimes the story means you focus more on one character over the others for one session, and then the next section is going to be somebody else.
Yeah, and at the same time, I think that was just the pretext. Yeah, I think that was the pretext for the real reason they left, because they kind of had a head-to-head out of character moment with the same player who was playing the rogue, who was always going off and doing things.
Mm-hmm.
Their character had an idea or a problem with what they were with the. So the players are. So let me a little bit of background. The characters are trying to figure out why the goblins are suddenly raiding the countryside when they've never really come out in huge numbers, right? They've always been sort of a nuisance, right? Occasionally they'll steal a sheep, or they might harass, a caravan. Typical fantasy goblin stuff, right? Well, in the game, they're now out in force, ravaging everything from the land that they can get that's edible, right? Grain, sheep, farmers, whatever they can take.
Goblins is locusts.
Basically, yeah. But they're all taking, but anything that they can take alive, they're taking alive and taking it back to this area of the campaign world. Anyways, that's the background. So the party's they're debating like what's going on and what they should do. And that's kind of where things came to head, is that this player who ultimately decided to leave had a pet theory, and the other player had a conflicting theory, and I could tell that, not to be crude, but I could tell that the real life dicks were starting to get measured in this discussion, because when one of the players starts talking about, well, hey, I can't help it, I'm a scientist, and because they are a scientist in real life, and they're trying to be scientific about this. The other player's like, I'm also a scientist, and just so you know, but he's like, I'm a scientist too, but my character isn't, and so my character is doing things in the character way. I'm playing my character. I'm not, my character believes that this is what's going on. He's role play. And it wasn't one of those I'm only doing what my character would do kind of moments. It was definitely not that. It was literally put your real world credentials away. I'm playing a character. This is a fantasy game. And the person, I don't think liked that, and I think they took exception because shortly thereafter, their significant other, who was also in the game, messaged me on the side. Yeah, they won't be coming back. In the middle of the session, by the way.
Wow.
I had half the session without them.
Welcome to my never invited to one of my games again list. Holy shit, what a baby.
This is funny because this person had got busy with real life. Cool. And before they had because they're a teacher, and I understand, depending on the time of year, your workload may be heavier or lighter. I understand real life. That's cool. And my game is always one that I'm okay with people having to exit from and come back to with good reason. So I want it to be fun. I don't want it to be, it's not your life. It is something you do on the side. Anyway, so that was cool. They also they had made a character initially that they weren't super thrilled with. And so I know I'm getting an echo from things. Let me double check my mic.
Make sure I'm not feedbacking.
Or myself again.
No,
Nothing's changed. Okay.
You're fine when you talk, but I can hear when I talk, there's a slight delay. There's the camera setting.
So is this your home game, or is this your, this isn't by the sword thing?
No, it's my home game.
Okay.
And so this person had also been unhappy with their character. I'm going to ignore the little slight feedback because it's very faint. And it's only because my ADHD ear is like, boop, 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 boop. No. I want to hear going. So this person had been unhappy with their character also, and one that they had made and they'd played for a while. So it wasn't like, hey, I played this for 2 sessions and now I want to change. They had tried to stake it out, but they're relatively new to the game, and they had some good reasons. They're like, hey, I think I picked a character that maybe not suitable for the game that we're in, and also I'm having trouble playing this, all the mechanics of this character. And so I said, okay, cool. When you come back, make a new character, and we'll just say your character wandered off between sessions because your character has full reason to do so, and we'll just have your character do the contrived character entrance at the next convenience. And it didn't even have to be all that contrived because it actually really worked because their character came in while the party had got to a town. So we just said your character had been there. So they made this new character and they started playing it, and then we had this thing happen, and I'm like, okay, well, it was kind of awkward playing the rest of the session, but we still managed. Points to the significant other who is still in the game that he stuck by it and didn't feel like the need to, I gotta go too, guys. Kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Which can often happen. But and that player was gracious enough to contact me, separately outside the game and say, hey, these are my reasons for leaving. I really appreciate you having me back. I appreciate you having me in the game. Thanks for the chance to play. All the graces, all the good graces that you could really offer. But it was kind of a weird one for me. I'm like, welcome back, and you're gone.
Mm-hmm.
RPG Dead and Dirty Districts. So yeah, that was Sunday's game. and then so tomorrow there won't be a By the Sword.
Right.
Because I am going to Jen's taken off, Tuesday, so I'm just gonna hang out with her and not have commitments on my plate the night before she has to go. I do plan to maybe squeeze some extra games, like one shots or something in the evenings, because I won't have to just race from work to cooking for the family and stuff like that. So, and before anybody screams, why isn't she cooking? Because I don't want her to, and I don't ask her to. Cooking is my transition from work. So I get off work, I cook. It allows me to get back into a human mindset, be personable for the rest of the evening. So,
Does she also work from home?
she is currently unemployed, but she had been
Okay.
from out. She usually, since we moved here and she lost her job with the company due to medical issues, she has been working outside the house where she has been able to find work. So she was on a temporary assignment. That temporary assignment ended. She's going to Seattle for 2 weeks, and then in the winter she's got basically a regular seasonal gig that she does during tax season. So she'll be going to that. And in the interim, she helps out with other things that she can. She uses it for personal projects, and like yesterday she was helping the neighbors mulch. And, Jen she can't sit still. She's always got a project. But yeah, for me the cooking is actually a transitional thing. I had tried saying, hey, and if I ever do have a day where I'm like, hey, can you take care of dinner? She's totally okay doing it. It's never a problem. It's just that for me, I much prefer to do it because that, like I said, that allows me to transition from my day to get out of work brain into family brain. So,
Yeah, that makes sense. It also makes sense if you're the one working from home, the other person's working out of the home. Presumably, you finish roughly at the same time. You can start cooking. The other person arrives. You have your meal.
I mean, time-wise,
She's
she's home, even working from out of the house. She's home way before I'm off work because I work a 10-hour shift on a West Coast schedule, and so I'm not off work till 7:30 local time. Okay.
But
again, I don't. It's not something that I've ever expected her to, and I enjoy it. So, it's she's willing to when I ask her to, and that's the important part because otherwise I want to do it. So, my point is like I can get away with throwing something together real quick that'll I guess I can go back to bachelor mode and eat leftovers and stuff like that more often. So.
I eat ingredients.
No, I mean I like to cook, and so it's always hard for me to actually go into the kitchen and just eat simple stuff like even just a bowl of ramen nowadays. It's actually something pretty complex for me. But yeah, so what have you been up to gaming wise, Mr. Grumpy?
Well, actually, last Monday, did one of those choose your own adventure mazes from Jeux Stratégie with Iman, and that's actually been it. All my games are in the coming week, so there was going to be the By the Sword on Monday. Thursday, I should have my DC-20 game. And then there's going to be OSC next week, which I missed yesterday because I have the superpower, can't say no. And somebody asked me, oh, the driver for our flyer run can't make it. Could you drive us for that, bringing flyers to different stores, please? And so I said yes, but that meant I missed yesterday's OSC game.
Well,
and then in the evening, I was just too tired to take part in the Axe game that was happening on the Old Geeks server. So there it is. Very quiet game-wise this past week. We'll have a game this Thursday. Next weekend, there's a small convention in town that I'm going to go to.
Which one?
It's called Boreal. It's a French science fiction convention. Yeah. I might play some games there. Who knows? It'll all depend. I usually bring my dice just in case.
Where is it?
It's actually not too far from you. I think it's Cégep Bois de Boulogne or something like that. Does that make sense? In Montreal North?
Oh, it's in Montreal North. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So,
It's just down the road from me.
maybe then we should try to meet up for a meal
I'm
or
good.
something.
I'm not going to any French cons, thanks.
No, but I could come up to where you are if I'm close by.
What day is it?
Saturday, Sunday. I could meet you Sunday morning, maybe.
Possibly, and we could go.
If
for
there's a
coffee.
breakfast place or a coffee place near your.
There's a Patino's nearby me,
Okay.
so that's breakfast. A little overpriced, but what are you going to do?
Yeah. Okay, well, we'll discuss this offline.
No, we're using Eli's channel as a hookup site.
I was talking about how I like to cook and stuff, so by all means, I mean, why not?
Oh, I'm sure because the entire world will be fascinated by our arrangements to meet up for a coffee.
Well,
I mean, in more topical news, I went and saw Alien Romulus. I enjoyed it. I liked it. I then promptly watched everything in the Alien catalog afterwards, just to kind of like revisit the whole thing. Found myself liking something, not disliking some movies that I disliked on first and second pass. I found them a little bit more palatable this time through. I don't know if it's just time and distance from my original feelings. But yeah, it was fun. I mean, even the ones that I generally just dislike, I'm one of those people who watches a movie and finds the enjoyable stuff in it and tends to not really worry too much or try not to worry too much about the stuff that bugs me. And I think that's why these were much more enjoyable this time. I've already dealt with my feelings over the parts that bothered me. And don't get me wrong, I mean, I'm not going to spoil anything, but Romulus has its problems. I do enjoy it for several. I did enjoy it for all the. A reviewer I listened to made a really good point. It has lots of good steps forward. Unfortunately, it's also got plenty of steps back that kind of keep it hanging in limbo. So there's lots of cool new ideas in it, but there's also way too much callback to previous movies and in it. So, now, granted, I would say at this point in the franchise, it's getting really tricky to try and do something completely new. Like, really, I mean, you've got what, 4 in the main story franchise, 3 if you don't count Resurrection, and then you've got Covenant and Prometheus, which are in the main timeline as well. And then, of course, with Alien, with the AVP stuff, while they're not in the main timeline, it's still new tricks with the Alien.
And there's 2 sets of those because the comics are set at a totally different time and place.
I'm just talking about the theatrical releases at this point.
Yeah, but
there's also the whole novel verse as well too. All the novels. Although I did find out only recently that the Alien novelizations for a bunch of their most recent novels that have come out since the RPG have included adventures in them.
Really?
Yeah, so you read through the book, and in the back is an adventure. And the really cool part is, it's not just here's an adventure that retells the stuff in the book you just read. In at least in one occasion, one instance of the books, it's a related adventure that is not the story you just read. So it's some sort of side story, or maybe even like a prequel, or epilogue, prologue kind of a thing to what you just read that is playable in the RPG. I thought that was a really cool idea. I mean, it's kind of a masterstroke of marketing if you think about it. You're going to get the gamers buying the books for the adventures, and you might get some new people playing the game who haven't necessarily picked it up, but they like the Aliens books. So, but no, yeah, I would say Romulus is definitely worth seeing. But yeah, it inspired me to watch the entire series, and then it also then inspired me to pull this out again. So
Cool.
Cool.
With every successive Alien project, they just make more and more small universe syndrome, which drives me insane.
yeah, that's that. I mean, again, I don't want to get into too many spoilers because the movie's, or I don't want to get into spoilers because the movie's still too new. But there was a little bit of that in this. Not as bad as they made it sound like it was going to be based on the previews and stuff that I had seen. But yeah, it does make me want to run some sci-fi horror, if not necessarily specifically, Alien. Also trying to get my youngest and his significant other into Call of Cthulhu, so I'm writing a one-shot for the two of them to play through, because Call of Cthulhu actually works with a low player count pretty damn well. And I figured, it might be easier for them to access the system and learn it and get a good experience with it if they were the only ones involved in it. So they're not having to compete with more veteran players, but also they're not having to. They're getting more play time per person because they're the only ones in the game. So it will be a more efficient way to teach them the system, but also allow them to explore the setting. So, gonna do a Call of Cthulhu modern one too, not 1920s, which is always fun because you have to then figure out how to mitigate the effects of technology. Oh, hey, Brian. I see you snuck in, and Sergeant Dan. But yeah, so there's all that going on. My Shadow Dark back there, because I've been reading through that too. But other than that, I have not done much in the gaming universe. Well, that's not true. I've also been working on my werewolf miniatures. But and there you have games that you're back to running again and have something coming up too, right?
Yeah, I've got my my Thursday night Bare Bones Fantasy that we'll be skipping next Thursday because one of the players is away on a trip. Friday Night Heroic is back, which is fun. I have the Buffy Wild West coming up, and I have a as yet uncompletely decided Sword and Sorcery campaign coming.
Hey, Jason. Sword and Sorcery, weren't you talking about running that with BRP?
I am, but I was not sure the setting. I was going to do Hyboria, but I'm not 100% sure I want to do that anymore.
Yeah.
Just because way too many people have way too much knowledge and investment in it. And I don't.
That's fair. It's kind of why when I went with By the Sword, I created my own setting because I didn't want to necessarily have to wrestle with player knowledge, but also my knowledge. I mean Hyboria is, easy enough to just kind of hand wave because so much of it was just hand waved.
No.
But at the same time, I can create freely in the space that I made in my own. But yeah. Such an exciting stream this morning.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I'm just having my breakfast. I apologize.
No, you're good. And I'm super tired. So.
Yeah. Actually, you woke up super early. I had to go to bed super late because some people halfway down the street decided to have a party. And while they didn't invite the rest of the street, they made sure we knew about it. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
I got woken up by my cats.
yeah. We were talking about that earlier. Is my dogs that woke me up. So,
Mhm.
and then
All right, so
as they are dogs, they promptly went back to sleep. So,
I'm working on a sword and sorcery setting
Mhm.
called Warlords of Mu. Ancients of Mu, right? So
Yep.
it's been a lot of fun. But one of the things I'm doing, I've noticed, is I'm getting away from some of the tropes of sword and sorcery. And as a result of that, I think it might offend or upset anyone who's like really traditionalist. You know what I mean?
that's always a risk when you're coming in under the auspices of a particular genre, and then you start diverging from the tropes of that genre because people are coming into that expecting. It's like playing Star Wars and then not doing Star Wars. You know, it's like,
Well, and the problem is that the so-called tropes that people are expecting are not really solid tropes. They're just Conan.
yeah, because there's a huge body of sword and sorcery beyond Conan.
Exactly. And that's the problem, and that's the danger. Is like, are they going to be upset because I'm now, going in a different direction, or I'm changing things up, or oh my God, there are some non-human races in the world, but they're not elves and dwarves. They're intelligent simians that are like almost Romanesque in the jungle mountains. Like this Roman Republican culture they live in. Oh yeah, and then there's those evil dino men that live on the islands where they've been driven to, who
I think you'll be
dark magic.
I think you'll be pretty safe with those two because those are like those still sort of dovetail into the tropes of the genre because
Yes.
man apes and apes are all over the place,
Yes.
and the serpent men, lizard men are all over the place. So,
Well, as we had discussed, I want them to be very. I don't know if you and I were the ones who discussed. I want them to be very Planet of the Apes. You know what I mean?
probably
Like, I love.
it was me, but yeah, that's what I got from what
Yeah.
you described.
It's definitely like the simian culture I like is definitely the Planet of the Apes thing. You know what I mean? Like it really like that. So I like the idea of, the guerrilla military and the the orang sort of philosopher thinkers, and then the chimp sort of whatever, they're like the engineers, the scientists, the medicines, whatever of their society. And I find that all very bloody interesting, and I want to include that, right? Including as a possibility for a player character. If someone really wants to play an ape, they can, which would be kind of fun, I think, ultimately.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
well, that's actually funny on that topic. One of the things I really liked about the Tim Burton Planet of the Apes is I did like that he made the chimpanzees the violent ones.
Sorry, say that again, please.
The one thing I liked about the not the new current.
No, the current one's only the first one was good.
I mean, I've enjoyed them all, but that's beside the point. When the one Tim Burton Planet of the Apes one that they did, was it Tim Burton that did that with
Yes.
Yeah.
I liked that they made the chimpanzees the violent ones.
Yeah.
Because in real life, chimpanzees are the worst of the higher apes.
Yeah.
Like, in terms of like being brutal and militant and stuff. Gorillas just kind of hang around and do their thing, and are very much like they'll protect their territory and stuff. But chimps will literally go to war with each other and other apes.
Yeah. But see, I'm not making them a real world.
No.
I'm not saying that you're suggesting I should. I'm just saying I'm not doing that because I really 100% want to echo Planet of the Apes.
Oh no, that's totally cool. That was just an aside. I always found
Nothing wrong with that.
fun that he had worked that little insight into his version of the Planet of the Apes. Yeah, I mean, ape men and all of that. Like I said, you're going to be safe with that one. But yeah, it can be weird because, like, when you come in saying sword and sorcery, maybe you're coming at it from a Fafhrd and Grey Mouser or Melnibone kind of thing. Oh, Melnibone or however you're supposed to.
Made up bullshit place that doesn't exist to me.
Melvin
When
Bone.
you say it right, you sound like the stapler guy from Office Space.
Melnibone.
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 And
You took my stapler.
you took my magic sword.
Exactly. You took my slave encrusted sword. Because he's from Melnibone.
But no, I mean, there's all that type of stuff, and you might be deciding that you want to. It's funny. I don't think Jack Vance stuff is considered sword and sorcery, though. Is it, Grumpy? You're a little bit more in tune with the literary refinements.
I think some authors are associated with sword and sorcery, but I think some of Jack Vance's stuff definitely fits right into it. It's just people think of Vance maybe more of as a science fiction writer for a variety of reasons, even though that's not all he wrote. It's the
Yeah.
same with Powell Anderson. Some people think of him as an SF writer. Other people think of him as a fantasy writer because they've both written so much. And if you've only read some of it, you might get a completely skewed view of what it is they wrote.
What I find
We're calling him Powell now.
Well, that's Paul Anderson and
Powell Anderson, Poole Anderson. This guy, like, someone get him on the goddamn video so we can get his name right.
I think a lot of times somebody was commenting on that on the stream the other day about how the pronunciations of the things keep changing. That's because we're actually getting more insight into how they were supposed to be pronounced all along, and we're dropping the anglicizations and stuff like that.
Literally, when I was young, and I mean, like, under 15 years of age and younger, they used to refer to it on Canadian news as an inquiry. The Canadian Guard will be holding an inquiry. The RCMP is holding an inquiry. And then somewhere around 17, 18, it suddenly became inquiry. And I'm like, what the hell? What happened?
Yeah. I mean, pronunciations and words change over time. It's just language.
Well, given that all language is made up, who fucking cares? As long as you get your point across, right?
Actually, really curious on language. I was watching a thing earlier today talking about, while I was awake way too early, about how the Southern drawl and like the Louisiana, kind of French, Cajun kind of drawl are basically, if you speed them up, they become both the British accent and the French accent. They're just they're those original accents just drawn out. And which makes total sense, because I remember listening to British actors talk about how the Southern accent is so easy for them to do, because it's just literally just their normal accent and just drawing things out a little bit. Obviously you maybe sharpen up some of the vowels and stuff, but it got Americanized, says Seraphis. In Australia.
Yeah, he's not allowed to give us any comments on
Australia, the country that just says we're going to speak English, not any particular version. We're just going to cherry pick from both sides, British and American English.
Yeah.
So I actually finally got some support. I was listening to two British podcasters talking about soccer, the origins of the word. And one of them was actually talking about how it's a word that we created, popularized in America, and then abandoned, and now we make fun of them for it.
Which word?
Soccer.
Yeah.
Because the origins of that, of course, is the association football, which they then shortened to soccer, or they slanged to soccer because it was shortened to ASOC, and then they slanged it to soccer, and then when they brought it to the U.S. as soccer, we already had football, and they're like, oh, so we can't really call it football, so we'll call it soccer in America. So they brought it here because they tried to bring it here as football, and so they called it soccer here because we already had football, and then they just and it was weird. It was actually not too long ago that they abandoned the use of soccer. It was like in the last century. But no, it's fine. I actually argue with John about that all the time. It's like, this word, I'm like, you mean the word that you guys invented and then backed off from?
My favorite one to argue with John is twat.
Oh, yeah.
Because British insist on saying twat, to which I go, yet I don't drink water. So clearly, W-A-T is wa.
But then again, it also comes down to like which British accent do you have when you say it.
Oh, yeah, no. But then he likes to use it. Well, we made up the language and blah, 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 blah. It's like, that's nice. We perfected it. We're Canadians.
But did you really? Isn't English
We-
just
so-
cobbled
so-
together from earlier languages?
So here's the beauty of the Canadian pronunciation and accent. They don't do it anymore, sadly, but for the longest time, the Columbia School of Broadcasting, which created the lion's share of American television anchors, used the Canadian neutral accent because it was the most easily understood by everybody who speaks English. It was like this like nice little sit in the middle of everybody accent that we can all use. It was really neat. It was a fun thing. It was like a point of pride, I think, for us. Now, of course, who cares? Now we're all just, goofy Canadians, and you guys all hate us.
So, any more cool ideas for your sword and sorcery world besides apes and lizards?
Well, technically, you could put it in Barbarians of Lemuria. You could put it in Hyboria. You could put it in Primeval Thule, because it sits on the continent of Mu in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, which is roughly around, it's a big continent, but it roughly surrounds the Hawaiian Islands, right? So you could go south to Lemuria. You could go east to Hyboria. You could go west to the other side of Hyboria, or you could go north to Primeval Thule if you really wanted to.
Yeah, I mean,
So you could use all your stuff you've got for all your games and still play it.
I have a weird fantasy setting that I'm working on. I have been tinkering with for the longest time. I actually borrowed the name of it for the sword and sorcery world that By the Sword takes place in, which is Karsuth. But in my whole Karsuth idea, it is sort of a mashing up of a bit of Sword and Planet meets a little bit of Lost World meets a bit of Hollow Earth.
Okay.
With some Lovecraftian overtones. So Karsuth is a giant, basically, continent or more. There's a sea in there, cavern under the ground, right?
Sure.
It is the hollow space that has been created over the eons as the body of an elder god decays. And so the ceiling of the world of Karsuth is the remains of the elder god as it die. It's alive still, but it's dying also at the same time. And so, like, night and day cycles are actually perpetuated by like how many of its eyes are open and stuff, and it's got weird alien, and so bits of it will slough off and fall to the world below and get into the ecosystem, and that's why all the different weird races exist there. But also, it crystallizes and has become the currency of the people there too, as well. And so, yeah, it's just, like I said, it's a weird fantasy setting where you've got Stiltmen and the three cities where you have these metal men that live there, and it's designed to be very much a strange place. It was actually originally designed to take the place of the Underdark in a campaign setting, where regular fantasy characters would come down to this and like, why does that Quaggoth have a crown that is made up of a fossilized mind flayer skull on his head, and why is he intelligent now? Kind of those kind of questions.
Why wouldn't you want a crown made out of a fossilized mind player's head? That sounds awesome.
Also, yeah.
The idea behind this crown for these Quaggoths, because there's a Quaggoths, if you know them about D&D Underdark monsters, they're like the dumb servitor race, basically, right? But in this case, the leader of these Quaggoths always has this crown, and that Quaggoth suddenly the leader always has high intelligence because the psychic imprint of the mind flayer is still in the skull. And so it's basically super intelligent, giving the guy super intelligence when he puts it on. So our new leader, and he suddenly gets smart. But I also had one city state in there that was ruled by a gibbering mouther. Again, we're talking D&D races at this point, D&D monster stuff, because I thought it would be really cool to have a mad king who was this amorphous mass of mouths and eyes that was just sort of, I will hold counsel, and counsel is itself. Yeah. But also it had, in that setting, there was another monster that was called, they were called Squealers, and they were not the Squealers from Expedition to the Barrier Peaks, because I realized there was a monster and they were called a Squealer. These were degenerate mind flayers who had lost their intelligence but maintained a bit of their psychic ability, and they hunted in packs in Karsuth. And they would make this shrill squealing noise, of course, obviously. That was both psychic and actual physical. And audible. So, but they would hunt by basically pummeling people with psychic blasts, so they could then eat their brains. But they would hunt like kind of like ghouls almost, but they were after your brain. So it was just what?
Like you do.
Yeah, and then so it had a big old sea in the middle of it that was deeper than the water, but that was because from the bottom of the sea up to within basically maybe 1 or 2 atmospheres of the surface was actually a massive ooze. Most of the body of the water, so falling overboard, potentially dangerous. Like I said, just really leaning into the weird fantasy. I'd even created like 5 or 6 different ways to get to Karsuth, many of which followed sort of a Lovecraftian pattern. It was like, you could go up the steps in this mountain and find a portal to Karsuth. You could, enter through the dreams of a sleeping king. You could, there was an ancient tome you could find that would lead to very much having fun with it. And then, it's I've never been able to use it, so that's why I stole the name and gave it to my sword game. But yeah, so it was fun. I like creating worlds. It's I think, as a forever GM, it's the one part of the hobby you can perpetually engage in.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is I think that the people who do who fall into the category of forever GM, like Bear and I tend to, are the people who enjoy just sitting down and creating worlds and don't so much worry about whether or not we're ever going to get to play in them. We just kind of like create them and bank them. Was that?
That's agreeing on point.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not exactly understanding this hand sign, but so we would, and so they're there though for when you do decide to use them, or you want to try something new, because then you're not having to like suddenly pull it out of your butt. But
I think world creation is a way of playing the game, as you said, and I agree with that 100%. I think ultimately people who don't have the world building bug will never understand those of us who do. And the reason they'll never understand those of us who do is because they've never understood the sheer joy we get from taking it, from creating it, and sharing it.
Yeah.
And getting feedback on it. But one of the things a lot of people do that I feel is a mistake, and I try to avoid whenever I can when someone shares their world with me, is I try to just talk about the positive aspects of the world they've shared with me, not, what you should have done. Oh my God. Nothing is more useless to a creator than someone telling us what we should have done.
I will tell you the absolute gut shot.
Sorry?
I will tell you the absolute gut shot for when you're sharing anything creatively is when you either show them the awesome piece of artwork you've done, or you explain your new world or whatever, and then you get the like such and such.
Oh,
hate that. All throughout high school, I'd be drawing like I was a kind of ahead of the curve for the Japanese animation thing. So here I am drawing like Gundam and Macross and stuff like that, and just made up mecha off the top of my head because I was into Mechton and all of that, and Giant Robo, and some dude, nice transformer. As an adult, I know he didn't know the difference, but at the same time, anytime you're like, you create your own original superhero character and you show it to somebody, you're like, oh, he's kind of like Batman in that he has a cape and he wears a dark costume. Sure.
I literally, the first issue of Heroic, there's a profile in shadow shot of Devil Dog. and he has devil ears on top of his thing, right? The amount of we'll call them normies, people who aren't comics people, who went, aren't you gonna get in trouble for just stealing Batman's look? And I'm like, it's not that. What are you talking about? The man has 2 pistols, no cape, no bat symbol. What are you talking about? Like, what is wrong with? But that I can forgive. It's the people that do it. Then there are people who do it, like, just because they want to be clever. They want to show how clever they are. Oh, so it's just like this. And they do it in a dismissive way.
Mm.
There's a special room in hell for them where I get to spend 8 hours a day. Like, fuck.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, with the guys who would be like nice Transformer, in retrospect, it bugged the crap out of me as a kid, but everything did. But in retrospect, it's like, yeah, they didn't know.
No, they didn't know, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, if you want to support your creator, if you want to show your friends who create things that they really did something special, appreciate the good aspects of it. Don't compare it to another media franchise, and never say, oh, you know what you should do? Oh, my God.
If you really want to make them super happy, too, find specific things to talk about the thing that they just shared, too. Because it shows that you're paying attention. And that you appreciate the details, because it's really easy to go, oh yeah, that sounds really cool. Well, yes, I knew that. That's why I made it. Although sometimes what we think is cool is not necessarily cool either. We all fall into that trap too. Hey, I made this awesome thing. And then upon reflection, you're like, and it is only awesome to me, apparently.
Or to people 100 years hence.
What was that, Bear?
It's like when you have a really good joke or a riff and you drop it and no one laughs, but in your head you're like, no, fuck you, that was funny. That was really funny. You fucking pearls before swine plebs, Yeah,
nothing as a gamer too, as a GM, like, hey guys, I got this great idea for a campaign. We're gonna do this, and this. For like, nobody responds to it. You're like, oh, okay. So that was this.
Yeah, that was the Battlestar Galactica game with everybody else, by the way.
Yeah.
you and I were super into it, and the rest of them were all like...
I was picking up on that when you were pitching it. I'm like, man, this is really awesome. And it got my imagination going, too. I had what I thought was a cool character idea that fit into the game, but had flavor, and then I had to back out. But
and then they were all like, I'm like, hey, it's been a week or so. I haven't heard anybody. You not feeling this? And they're all like, it's not really my thing. No. Yeah. I'm like, all right, let's play something else.
Yeah,
let's do Old West Buffy.
Here's another gaming tip for those people who are just players and not forever GMs. When your GM is pitching something to you and it's not your thing, just tell him.
Yeah.
Don't take a week or more to get back to him, and only after he has to come hunting you down to get your opinion on it. Because in that time, he's already wasted untold man hours trying to create for that setting.
Or better yet, and this is if you've enjoyed playing with this GM before and you've enjoyed their games and you see them super excited about an idea that's maybe not hitting for you, but it doesn't offend you or put you off, give it a try. You might have fun you didn't expect to have.
Oh, yeah. And
actually, one of the effects of waiting a week is that not only do you spend time prepping for it, at least in your mind, but you also build yourself up. Like, oh, this is going to be so cool and blah, blah. And it's even more of a letdown when a week or 2 weeks later they say, oh, no. Whereas if they'd said it right away, you wouldn't have energized yourself about it. And I find that's a worse letdown than...
Oh, I had plots. I had a whole story I was working on. I was having scenes and moments. I started collecting races of aliens they could meet and different ideas for shit. And I was like, oh, okay, we're not doing this. Well, that just goes in that folder that I never get to. Every now and then I open up my Battlestar Galactica folder and I just kind of go, then I look at it and I reminisce and then I close it and go to whatever thing people actually want to do.
So I've made this comment before too, and it's interesting. I get mixed responses. Some people say it sounds like really mercenary thing to do. Personally, to me, it's just like good gaming etiquette. Play the thing that you maybe don't want to play to eventually get to play the thing that you want to play. People are always like, well, if you don't like what he's trying to run, why don't you run something yourself? Well, not everybody is is
That's
a
right.
is a GM. But at the same time, you can, if you're part of a regular gaming group that cycles through games on a pretty good basis, play the game that everybody else is wanting to play it, have fun with it. Like people have pointed out, you're probably going to end up having a good time anyways, because if you've played with these people, like you said, you know this GM, you played with them before. But also, you then have weight the next time you're like, hey, can we play this? Because you have done the thing. You've been a team player and a group player and played the game that other people wanted to play when they pitched it. So yes, when you then chime in with your new hotness that you absolutely are dying to play, you might find that people's ears aren't quite so deaf to your weird niche game that you want to play.
And welcome to GM therapy.
No, I mean there's a lot of groups have that anyways. Most groups have the player or players who are just down to play anything. Whatever it is, you say I'm going to run this. They're like, yeah, I'm there. Because for them, it's about playing the game and it's about trying new things, and they're always excited. And if you have those people, great. Then you probably don't ever have a problem getting to play the game that you want to play. But yeah, there's you can also, I mean, you can always become a GM if you want. If nobody wants to play the game that you want to play, that's kind of a harder sell on a lot of people, because a lot of people don't want to be GMs, and that's fair. Or they don't have the mental skill set to be a GM. But don't be a disruptive player, and don't be basically a campaign cock blocker either. Don't sit there and fold your arms and go, I'm not playing that. Well, fine, then excuse yourself from the table. Yeah. So,
well, I mean, and the thing is that, like, okay, look, I've said this many times. It's something I feel very strongly about, and I will continue to feel very strongly about as I get older. Here's what you do, players. You make a character, and then you show up every 2 weeks to play the game. 90% of you do nothing in between games, don't care, don't send in questions, don't, like, one or two of you might, but for the most part, you just wait until the next session, and that's your participation level.
And even if you're asked...
No. Let me finish, you interrupting cow. The GM, on the other hand, in those 2 weeks between games, is constantly working on the campaign. Is constantly coming up with adventures, NPCs, visual aids, things like that. Maybe respect that a little bit, that we put a lot more into these games than you do in the long run. So be not saying a whole lot, but a tiny bit more accommodating and a tiny bit more of a team player. Now go ahead, Slan, please. Mr. Slan? Hello, Grumpy. Uh-oh, the aliens got him.
mute myself because I have a yapping dog.
I don't know where Slan went. He was right there. Maybe he's having mic troubles.
Possibly. He was having mic issues. Either that or you really insulted him with the cow.
Yeah, clearly. Clearly he's like, oh, God. Looks like I'm having some connection issues, so I'll drop out unless it resolves itself in a few minutes. Okay.
Well, cool. Let's see what we got. Yeah, West March is a style of play that people have to be. There's a lot of conceits for that to work. Because you have to be okay with when the session's over, basically the game is over, that every session is a reset to play. That's how West Marches goes. You get as far as you can get in a session, and then when everybody gets back together, it's a whole new deal. So you have to kind of accept how that plays. I've never played in one, but that's the main thing that doesn't appeal to me, because if that was the case, then I could just play MMOs where we wander the world and we beat up as many orcs as we can in the hour that we have to get together to play. But next week we have to go beat up the same orcs again because we didn't finish. But
stupid orcs.
I used to do, when people used to ask, why don't you like MMORPGs? Why don't you play like World of Warcraft or anything? I'm like, because when I kill the Orc King, I like him to stay dead. It's that. I want the world to evolve with the actions of my character and the other characters that are in the game. When I kill the Orc King, I want the Orc King to stay dead until maybe he's replaced with another Orc King or there's a new plot development. I don't want to have him respawn and have to come and do the run again.
I understand that completely. Like, I completely get that. I don't like MMOs. Never did, never will. The only one I've ever really liked. Sorry, you couldn't last Grumpy Slant. Sorry, your tech issues, man. The only one I ever liked was City of Heroes. Right? Everyone knows I love City of Heroes. That's it. But even City of Heroes got to that point where, hey, we're fighting the Rikti invasion again for the 12th time. What the hell?
RPG dead. I mean, yeah, maybe with AI, MMOs will evolve to that, but I don't think so because there's still going to be a limit, at least within our lifetimes, to what kind of graphical rendering and world building, graphic world building that the AIs will be able to do real time and time enough, And ultimately, where do you store all that stuff, and where's all that processing power coming from to do that? Because you can't have a player base like WoW and expect that it's also going to be custom generating content for everybody who's on, right? It will do some things. I'm sure it will have a degree of innovation in MMORPGs, although I mean those I don't think any of them that have come along have really quite filled the same niche that WoW did in that sphere. I mean, people are doing what?
WoW was a pretty 800-pound gorilla in the room, really.
Yeah,
EverQuest had that for a while.
Yeah, I mean, you have a lot of people playing Skyrim, but Skyrim's player base was never as big as World of Warcraft to begin with. Then you have lots of people playing Fallout, but that's also kind of a niche. You don't have as many. I think WoW had an appeal to. WoW had an appeal that those two don't have. My mother-in-law played WoW. My sister-in-law played WoW. People who were not gamers in any other sense played World of Warcraft.
Yeah.
I have not seen or heard about the same popularity as, with things like Fallout or Skyrim and stuff like that. Now, down the road, will AI be that good? Yes, but at that point, MMOs in their basic structure probably won't even resemble what they are now. I mean, if we can get to that point with AI, it's very possible that you'll have GMs creating custom content for their players to go through. In a digital environment, you'll just type up the adventure and have the AI turn it into graphics, and then everybody will go through it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of what WotC is trying to move towards with their new VTT, their one that uses the Unreal Engine and all that.
I'm not. I just can't.
No, I mean,
I just can't even discuss it anymore. I've gotten to the point where this whole AI, VTT, blah, 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 it's like there's no right choice anymore.
No.
Right? There's literally people who aren't artists are rallying cries and condemning people. And it just leaves me in this position of you know what? This is happening. Whether you like it or not, this is happening. No, but we could rally more people to our cause. And that's when you sound like a zealot. And that's when you sound like, you're protesting the order of things. And I got sad news for you. The vast majority of people out there do not have the creativity, time, or ability to generate and create these things themselves. Therefore, having these digital tools where they can type a paragraph and go click, click, click and get something that's useful to them are going to win out in the long run.
Yeah. I mean, artists will be able to, I guess the only, I mean, not to get into, I'm not going to get in this discussion, never mind. I mean, I do worry about the future of working artists. But, you know, and it's not because there's not going to be any customers for them. It's just that the customer pool will thin out because there's always going to be that marginal section of people who are like, I don't care where my art comes from. I just want art. Yes, I could afford to pay somebody to make me art, but at the same time, I don't care enough to do so. And that's where I think we're going to lose. The artists are going to lose ground. They're not going to lose ground from the customers for whom it matters. Although ultimately it may mean that they have to charge more for their time to make up for the lost overall business. But anyways, the AI in terms of like the non-graphical stuff, I find is really useful. I've played around with ChatGPT trying to do like RPG stuff.
Yeah.
And I find that it is really interesting and useful as a creative prompt. I threw in, because when I was playing around with it, I found that it was coming up with ideas that did not occur to me.
Yeah.
I asked for, I think one of the ones that was really fun for me is I asked for, I used D&D 5th edition terms because I was doing it for D&D. I'm like, I want, create 3 creatures that are themed around Tiamat and evil dragons in the context of Dungeons and Dragons. I'm not exactly remembering the exact words, that are such and such challenge rating. And, give them each, 2 to 3 special abilities.
Yeah.
The stuff it produced was interesting stuff. I've actually had it produce magic items. Because creative people, even the most creative people, often do find themselves in ruts where their brain attaches itself to a certain stylistic, direction. And so having those prompts, it's really not much different than what all the OSR guys and even the modern players are like, roll random tables. Those are always great for inspiring your imagination. Yes. And with ChatGPT, I was able to accomplish similar things to what I could do on the roll table. It just also did a little bit of the busy work too. Like now I don't have to calculate all the stats and mechanics for it because it'll throw it out. Did I go back and fine tune some of it? Yes. Am I cheating as a GM?
No,
not really. Although it did prove to be relatively good at more complex building. I had it create entire historical army lists for war games using specific rule sets.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow.
So I use ChatGPT a lot for writing, heavy lifting, and kicking ideas around with. And I do what you do. I go, okay, give me 5 ideas for a supervillains based around water, right? And it'll chunk me out 5 ideas. And if I like any of the ideas, I'll pick, okay, let's zoom in on this one, change this, and change this. Okay, now do this. Okay, now give me a backstory where the plot points are blah, 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 blah. And it'll write me out the backstory. That's a tool. That is what tools are for. Yes, you could go mix the concrete yourself, taking incredible amounts of time of, but hey, they have this thing called a cement mixer. It'll do it for you faster.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and I think it's useful. I mean, even my brother, who works in very professional spheres,
oh my God, it's all over,
uses ChatGPT to parse data for him. Yeah. He still has to do his job, but he has it do a lot of the mid-level, low-level functionary bullshit pieces of his job.
Yeah.
That then allows him to put his brain power towards the really important parts of his job. And I could see that.
Yeah. And look, in my work, I use ChatGPT. In the HR department, uses it to make really, really, really to form letters and stuff like that. And the point is that it's just a tool. Everyone has. So here's the problem: the Luddites out there, or the neo-Luddites, we'll call them, www.luddites.com. If you get the joke, you get the joke. They think that these are thinking machines that are taking over our jobs and are going to be terminated by next week. I had Nerds Nerd, who works in this world, explain it to me in dumbed down terms, but someone with an IT background so I could understand it. They're not thinking. They're just extrapolating what they think, what they guess at based on scanning the internet faster than you ever could, and then going, okay, this all stuff is what he said, this is an algorithm, and this is what I think is the most predictable outcome of what they want. Blah.
Yeah.
It's not going, yes, good question you asked me there, Eli. Allow me to pontificate, and I will speak with 3 other AIs to see what we all feel is a consensus on this.
No, it's not there yet. Although I did hear one particular case where it's actually produced a pretty drastic outcome. There was an AI written book that misidentified a poisonous plant.
Oops.
And somebody was going by that book, ate the plant, got poisoned.
Oops.
It misidentified a poisonous plant as a look-alike non-poisonous. So, I mean, and granted, that is something that you, having read a book on survival and on edible plants, could still make that mistake yourself. But it is the sort of thing that you will see if the problem is we're seeing fully AI written books getting thrown up on Amazon.
Yes.
And you really have to work to make sure that they're not, you basically be sure what you're getting.
Okay. But at the same time, I guarantee you there are more human written books that have killed people through bad advice than this one AI book, right? Like you mentioned. So this boils down to the Teslas catching on fire thing. Yeah. Remember when that was all the rage? Teslas are catching on fire. Do you know how many gasoline cars catch on fire a year?
Oh, yeah. And that was what was coming out when the gasoline engine was coming around. They're like, it's going to frighten the horses, and the gasoline is flammable. Look what it can do. And here's a dummy that I'm going to pour gas all over and light it on fire. They also complained about that with hydrogen vehicles. Remember when they were like, we can't have vehicles on the road? Hydrogen is explosive. But you know the big difference between a hydrogen fire and a gas fire? Hydrogen fires go out real quick. They burn because when all that gas escapes, it goes into a big fireball that goes up really fast. Yep. Gas hangs around and burns for a good long time.
Napalm sticks to little children.
Yeah, there's always going to be that argument when you invent. The big problem, honestly, is that, and this is not what people came here for the stream for. Society keeps removing jobs, but not putting things in its place to replace them. We're not getting the Star Trek future where all I need are taken care of, so I can now engage in creative endeavors and express myself and explore the galaxy. We're not getting there. We're getting to I don't have a job. You still expect me to engage in capitalism, but I don't have any money. You got the robots making the things, and you expect me to buy the things, but I can't get a job that'll allow me to afford to buy the things.
No, and this is why, and UBI is one of those really contentious things that people talk about, and I pay a lot of attention to the UBI arguments because Canada will probably be, like the Scandinavia, one of the countries that will pioneer ultimately the UBI revolution, because it's coming whether you like it or not. It has to.
It's a have to at this point.
But when I watch the arguments against it from people, I sit there thinking, do you not realize you're arguing the oligarch's point? You're literally being told by rich people to argue against your best interests and shame those who are trying to give you a better way of hopefully surviving in this nonsense world we live in. It drives me insane. Especially literally the sheep arguing on behalf of the wolf.
It's particularly vexing too because we have countries where we've seen it work. It's been experimented. Would you stop? We've had countries experimenting with it long enough where we've started to get data on it. And even before there was UBI, there were things like Sweden, for example, has like artists stipends that you could get. If you're a young artist and want to just create, you can get paid by the government to create. So that is your job now, because they recognize that a society with art and literature and music, which are all forms of art anyways, is a good society. It's a society that grows and benefits. And if you stop, if you
heard
want,
Misty, stop.
If you want a society that grows in ways that he has this just absolutely ear-piercing bark.
No, if you want to have your consumer society, you have to give the consumers something to consume with, right? That's what it boils down to.
Yeah.
Now, one of the problems, one of the most common arguments you'll ever hear is, the taxes are we got to pay for you with our taxes. Do you know what your fucking taxes are used for, you morons? It's used to pay down government debt on the vast amount of money they borrow from the world banks. Taxes are not used to pay for roads, to pay for schools, to pay for hospitals. That's all out of their money they borrow. The taxes go against the interest on that money. So if you want, if you're worried, well, now they're going to have to pay more. No. Look at where they're spending their money, and then you can figure it out. But no one wants to do that. Notice governments will never let you audit them. Businesses can be audited, but governments can't.
Yeah,
if we found out where all that money was going, we'd shit a brick and burn them in their fucking cars.
Yeah, anytime anybody ever tells me that, like, well, we just have to pay. We'd have to pay more in taxes. I'm like, or we could actually make them manage the tax revenue they're already taking in a lot better. That's near impossible. But anyways, this is supposed to be talking about gaming. So what we really need,
okay, we're talking about cyberpunk dystopias.
What we need is a sexist to tell us how to turn this into a spreadsheet to apply to our campaign world. But
anyway, the point is that if we're going to keep going the way we're going, we have to accept certain things like AI, robotics, and what have you, and then use them as the tools they are to maximize their benefit to all of us. Yeah. And I'm sorry for the RPG artists and all those people out there that try and make their living at it. I have dealt with enough of you that I would say the 90% of you that will not be working in art anymore are no loss to commercial art, because you're unreliable, you're argumentative, you're overpriced, and you don't deliver on time, and you hand in garbage at the last minute because you're incapable of running a business or incapable of being professional. To the professional ones, which roughly, let's say 10%, and I'm being generous, of that community, you'll have no problem because you've already proven your track record. You've shown that you can do it. You've shown that there is a way to do it. Okay? And that's the ultimate end. That's the beginning and the end of it for me. Will I always use real artists? Yes. For the time being, I use real artists. Will I use AI to figure out what I want my stuff to look like and what I want it to be? Yep, because it saves me time and money.
Yeah. And that goes on the writing side of things too. I think we've seen this actually since like the OGL came up. For example, the original OGL ever since then, and going all the way back to 3.5, right? Yes, there's so much stuff out there, but so much of it is crap. And if there was an editorial process behind that, a good chunk of it wouldn't even get to press. Now, is it good that people have a way to express themselves and to put their stuff out there to where they can get feedback on it? Yes. And it's actually, that has produced some really cool creators. But ultimately, those people probably would have been pretty cool creators anyways. It's just all this did was expedite because ultimately those people who become really good creators are people who take the feedback that is given and use it. They respond to it in a way that is positive, and they don't just double down and say, I'm going to make whatever the hell I want, no matter what you say about it. And granted, stick to your guns. If you want to stick to your creative, impulses, fine. But, going back to a conversation from several weeks back, if that's what you're going to do, then don't piss and moan when you're not runaway success because you don't appeal to the mainstream. You could be an artist who paints in his own shit. That's cool. But you're going to have like 5 people who like you, probably more. But, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, you're not going to have everybody like you. You're not going to have enough people necessarily to, make a living out of it. But if you do put out your first draft, you put out your unedited stuff, and you use the feedback you get on it as a sort of, editorial after the fact, then yes, you will improve. But that's kind of venturing out of the AI art discussion. But in terms of creative people, that's, with my whole experience as a miniatures producer and sculptor, I backed out of miniature sculpting because, not because I got bad feedback. Actually, I backed out of it because I got good feedback. People wanted more than I could produce.
Fair.
And and part of the problem is that I sort of ran before I learned to walk. I started selling miniatures before I really become proficient at making miniatures. And so I had a miniatures range that was mostly built off of contracted sculptors from back when I had money. And then I had my own sculpts. Now, people liked my sculpts, but I could not produce them efficiently enough to keep a line growing steadily. And so, but again, the positive feedback I got was still used by me to some good, because I removed a lot of stress and self-hating mentality off of myself when I decided this is not for me. I cannot do this, and I do not have the time in my day to get good enough to where I can get to this point, at least this late in my life. Had I started sculpting in my 20s, sure, I got plenty of time to power through. But my eyes aren't getting better. My hand-eye coordination isn't getting better. It's really a little late to try and become a master sculptor, especially right about at that time was when the digital revolution was coming around too. So, yeah. All right.
I agree. Well, sir, it was a pleasure talking to you today.
Yeah, it was fun. It wasn't too gamey.
We talked about a bunch of game stuff at the beginning, and then we went off the way old men do. We talked about the world.
We
God, I guarantee you, Plato or Socrates or Aristotle were sitting around, and the early morning was, philosophy and the greater noblesse of mankind. And by lunch, the older guys were going, I can't believe what these Athenians are doing with the plumbing. It's unreal. And all the young people are like, but we came here for philosophy. Shut up.
Believe the price of focaccia.
I can't believe that what they're putting in the tea,
I had goat cheese the other day, and I tell you, it was 50% cow's milk.
Oh my goodness! But the point is that this is the nature of communication. It evolves; it goes places.
All right. Well, on that note, I think I am going to call the stream. Go get a quick bite, recharge my caffeine, because I have to try and go do therapy on sleep, so that'll be fun. Because we're always at our most emotionally mature and solid state when we're tired.
Yes, Sunday mornings are always the best time to talk about the deep things of mankind.
Well, thanks for everybody who showed up. Sorry, this wasn't the most gamey conversation, but that, like Bear says, that's how it goes. We come in with the game stuff, and eventually we either stay there and talk about 8 million different games, or we degenerate to Old Men Yell at Clouds. But have a good one, guys.
I like being part of Old Man Yell at Clouds Club.